Yo, what's up guys? Today we're going to talk about the corrosion. It got a massive buff in the recent patch and now we have 80% chance to trigger power surge. So it went from 70 to 80% and next we have power surge can deal critical hit. So it was 15, now it's 25. Next we have crit damage 50% for 6 seconds up to 4 stacks. So before we had 150 crit damage, now we have 200 crit damage and everything overall got buffed. And I think now this is like way too OP because now I think this is way too OP because as a corrosion main, I find this weapon before the update still dominate in PvP. Now it's just gonna overpower everything. Corrosion already can beat the wildfire, the jaws, the bingo in the close range. Now I think corrosion gonna just compete with the Doombreaker. Also I have updated my spreadsheet and I got other builds, and also we gonna talk about the bingo corrosion, and we gonna also talk about the dual corrosion. I will provide the link for this spreadsheet in the description. So if we take a look at the power surge, it gonna do 50% of your PSI as a status damage, and you have 40% less accuracy, but this damage will not decay in the distance. So as long as you can hit the target even really far away, your status will not decay. You will still do the same damage as in the close range. So higher the PSI, the higher your status damage gonna be. And let's talk about the armor pieces. We're gonna use the gas tied mask. This one gonna give you crit rate 35% and power surge damage 15% for 3 seconds. So right now my crit rate is 43%. If I just hit and drop the surge, and I'm gonna get 78%. This is gonna be the key armor. Then we gonna have 3 savior or 3 stormweaver, whatever you like. Then we're gonna have 1 tide and 1 shelter. The tide gonna give you the weapon damage reduction, and from the shelter you're gonna get status damage reduction. And for the weapon mode, we are going for the static shock. The reason we use static shock for everything basically because surge is instant damage. It's not like continuous damage, so the duration doesn't matter as long as we can proc another surge, and your surge damage gonna be 20% higher. Without other stuff like giving you the stacks over time, this gonna give you the instant 20%. Next we're gonna talk about the armor mode. For the helm, we are going for the faithful strike. This one gonna give you crit rate and the crit damage. And for the top, we are going for the battle modes. I recommend going for the either endurance shield or resist. Ardent shield, when it come to open PvP, I think endurance and resist, those two will be the best. And I have made a guide about the battle modes and I talk about this in depth. Check that out if you want to learn about them more. And for the bottom, we are going for the dead shot. This is gonna give you crit damage 45% with the stacks. So the weapon have crit damage stacks, and the dead shot, these and the cradle, everything just gonna work perfect with the dead shot. If you're gonna use a life force, it's gonna be the dead shot, not the mass mode. We just gonna talk later. So next we got the shoe mode. We're gonna use the covered advance. This gonna give you 20% weapon and status damage for 30 seconds when you just don't take any damage. And for the gloves, we are going for the crit amplifier because the reason we are not going for the crit boost is we already have enough crit rate. But for weapons like Doombreaker, you have to use the crit boost because there's like no other crit rate from. And for the mass, we are going for the first electrocution. Gonna give you 35% more damage when the enemy don't have power surge stats. I don't know why even before the update, when enemy just hold a bow or anything like that, we still did 30% more damage. But I don't know, I think they just fixed the translation, I guess. So for the substat, you are going for the violent. This is gonna give you crit damage. And for the other substat, you can either go for dual reduction, for this one is weak spot, but as example, you can either go for dual reduction on your all mods, or you can just have crit damage at crit damage 15% and weapon damage reduction. So for the calibration, we are going for the dual crit rate, and for the substat, you only have to focus on the crit rate and crit damage. That's it. No talents, nothing. Not even the suffix mode, because suffix only it's not gonna increase your base damage or base crit damage. So for example, you see if I hit, so for example, when I hit, I do base damage and base crit damage, and I do power surge, so everything can crit. So when you go for the suffix, it's only gonna increase your power surge damage, not the base damage or base crit damage. And also for the mods, if you go for the weapon damage mods, it's gonna only increase your base. It's only gonna increase your base and base crit damage. It's not gonna increase your power surge damage. I have played so much corrosion, and the best is just get the crit damage to the max. Either have dual reduction to a point you have both at 40%, or you can go for the and have two infliction modes like this one. I have weapon damage reduction and status and the weapon inflict. When I do damage to a target, they will do less status damage to me and the weapon damage also, so you will get overall damage reduction. So benefit with this one is really situational because you have to do damage to the person to get the reduction, but if you have the dual reduction, it's permanent. And I see Corrosion as a fun build, not as a serious build, so I will focus on the crit damage and the weapon damage reduction, everything except for the battle modes having dual inflicted. I think that's the best aggressive Corrosion, but if you want more stable, you can go make your weapon damage and status reduction around 40% both and have around 15k max HP. Since we can use two buffs with the Jeff, we can use safety sandwich, we can use scan meat, and we can use the Stardust Ratatouille. And of course for the drink we're going for the whimsical, gonna give you 25% status damage, and you can use the iced tea. This one gonna give you rolling speed and movement speed. Also for the secondary, you can either go for another Corrosion which gonna make it dual Corrosion, or you can go for the bingo with a vulnerability amplifier. The reason we are using the vulnerability is because we don't do much damage as a secondary weapon. So this is a hybrid build, so we don't do much damage as a bingo. That's the reason we are using the vulnerability. So this will increase your base damage and also your crit damage. And for the cradle perks, we are going for the anti-void. This is gonna give you 15% more weapon damage with shotguns, and we're gonna use the rapid aim, and we're gonna use tactical combo for weapon damage, and status enhancement for status damage, and deviation energy defense for the shield. When you have the shield, you're gonna get extra weapon and status damage. Next, we can use the elemental sense. This is gonna give you corresponding 25% elemental damage. And next, we're gonna use this one. This is gonna give you power surge damage. You will do more damage with this build, and you also can have another one. So if you use dual Corrosion, you can go with this one. This is gonna give you more energy to your deviant when it's in the cooldown. If you're using the bingo Corrosion build, you have to remove this one and this one, and also get the bounty hunter, because the bounty hunter can give you attack in the cost of you're gonna heal. Your healing gonna have more time, but overall that's the best for dual Corrosion and for the Corrosion bingo. That's it for the today video, guys. There's nothing much to say about the Corrosion. This is gonna be the final build even after buff or nerf, whatever gonna happen in the future. Thanks for watching and peace out.